Hi, my name's Dave, and what I'm presenting here is what I consider to be the most straightforward method for doing EM leveling for CPT coding. It involves a straight lookup table which I've created and which you can access online, and I have provided the link below. It's also something that you can use for the CPC exam. How? Well, by transcribing the table into a blank page of one of your books. That is one of the books that you're allowed to bring to the exam. Now, the copying process will take a little bit of time. I'd say perhaps 90 minutes for a good, neat job, maybe 60 for a quick and dirty job. And there are a couple of shortcuts you can take when you transcribe the table by hand, and I'll discuss them later in this video. This table, by the way, is applicable to the CPT code set as it stands in 2018. I hope to keep it updated for future years, and that will probably depend on what kind of feedback I get on this. If you like it and want to see it maintained, please do let me know in the comments. Now, a lot of people do find EM leveling to be tricky, and I know that various instructors online and in schools have presented their own takes on how to properly approach the problem. This approach, I think, is about as simple as you can get. So what it comes down to is this. You've got three key components: history, exam, and medical decision making, or we'll call that MDM for short. And now for each EM subsection, or more specifically for each EM subsection in which history, exam, and MDM play a role, there are 4 possible levels of history, 4 possible levels of exam, and 4 of MDM. And as a reminder, in the cases of history and exam, those levels are problem-focused, expanded problem-focused, detailed, and comprehensive, and we'll call them P, E, D, and C. And for MDM, the levels are straightforward, low complexity, moderate complexity, and high complexity. And we'll refer to those simply as S, L, M, and H. So if you've got 4 possible levels for each of the 3 key components, how many possible combinations are there? Well, if you've had any basic statistics, you might know that the answer is 4 times 4 times 4, and that works out to 64. And so if you have a look at the left side of this chart, the first 3 columns are for history, exam, and MDM. And within these columns, we have all the possible combinations of levels. And indeed, the chart has exactly 64 rows, 1 row for each possible combination. Now, life would be so simple if that was the whole shebang: 64 different combinations and a certain code for each one. But there's more than that, right? We've got all these different EM categories like office new patient, office established patient, initial observation care, emergency service, domiciliary services, which I'm not even sure I've pronounced that right, etc. And each category has its own rules, like some have 2 codes, some 3, 4, some 5. Some need all 3 out of the 3 components, some only 2 out of the 3. Anyway, you know what I mean. And so in the table, there is a different column for each category or subsection. And here they are. But again, the table only has columns for those subsections that actually use history, exam, and MDM as components in determining the code. For example, hospital discharge services has 2 codes, 99238 and 99239, and the determination of which code to use is based on time involved. It's not based on any of the 3 key components. So you won't see hospital discharge services in this table. Also, note that under each subsection title, I have listed the range of codes that fall under that subsection. Okay, like initial observation care, 99218 to 99220. Initial hospital care, 99221 to 99223. So if you're taking the CPC test, I think it would be faster to look for the proper code range rather than read the subsection titles to try to get to your code. And one more thing. Notice that there are some empty cells in this table. For example, under hospital observation services, initial care, most of the cells are empty. And why is that? It's because all of the codes in this subsection require a detailed history, and a detailed exam at a minimum. So a problem-focused exam, for example, is not an option for any code that you could have under Hospital Observation Services Initial Care. Okay, if it's not already clear how to use the table, let's do a quick run-through of an example question. Here it is, and for brevity, I'm going to blur out the parts we don't need. So, patient comes to ER, his physician admits him to the hospital, and documents a detailed history, comprehensive examination, and a medical decision-making of moderate complexity. So, okay, admission to the hospital from ER means this is hospital inpatient initial care. History is detailed, or D, exam comprehensive, C, and MDM is moderate, M, DCM. So now we intersect the row with the column, and there you have it. The code is 99221. And that's about all you need to know. Okay, now if you're taking the exam and need to transcribe this table into the book, I did mention a couple of shortcuts you can take. And here is the table as I transcribed it into the book. First, notice that all the codes have only 3 digits. And why is that? Well, all of the EM codes start with 99. So obviously, unless you have a really bad memory, you can remember to mentally pre-pen 99 to each of the codes when you look them up. Second, notice the vertical lines I've drawn under many of the codes here. Those are what I call ditto lines. Notice back in the spreadsheet that oftentimes the same code appears in a column for like 5, 10, even 20 consecutive rows. So do we really need to write down the same code time after time after time consecutively? No, of course not. Only if we're looking to retire early with a bad case of carpal tunnel syndrome. So I suggest you do this, and just remember that if you're looking up a code and come to a cell with the ditto line running through it, just scan your eyes upward until you come across the first cell with a code in it, and that's the code that applies to that cell. And also, remember we talked about empty cells. Make sure you distinguish between cells with a ditto line and cells that are intentionally empty. One other thing, you can pretty much ignore the last column here. That's just a list I have of all the EM codes that do not appear in this table because they're not based on the key components of history, exam, and MDM. I'm not really sure that column is of much use though. Alright, I guess that's about it. I want to emphasize that I feel pretty confident that this chart is 100% accurate. I have checked everything in it at least twice, in some cases more. And anyway, please do give me your feedback. Let me know if you want me to continue this. And if you're using it for the test, I might mention that I didn't actually use it for the test, but my wife did. And just a couple weeks ago, and she passed with flying colors. So I hope you find it useful. I hope you find it useful for the test or in your office. And please do get back to me and let me know. Thanks.